these rules are going to stick around. So the main, concepts in there, are going to be sort of like the shelf life of this book is the next, 7 years. And but
Yeah.
here's the deal. When I was kind of gathering the information, I was evaluating it from a sort of a practical standpoint. Like, is this good practical information?
Hey guys, welcome to CPA Primetime. Today we have Timur on the show. He has written a book about U.S. tax reform, and we're going to get a little bit into that in a minute. But he has an app that has to do with accounting as well. Maybe we'll get into that. But let's get right into it here. Without further ado, I would like to introduce you guys to Timur. And Timur, tell them, for the people at home who have never seen you, heard about you, he has 30,000 followers on Instagram. Whoa, right? But for the people at home, if you wouldn't mind just introducing yourself, then after that, going over your origin stories. How did you end up here? How did you end up on this show right now?
Sure. All right. Thanks for having me here on your show. So yeah, a little bit about myself. I've been in the tax space for about 15 years now. Originally, I'm Russian, and I kind of started working in Ernst and Young. Actually, my first job in tax was in Russia. I worked there for about a year. Then
I see.
after moving to this country, I continued with Ernst and Young and in New York, and kind of learned all the core tax stuff as I was sort of progressing through the ranks with this famous Big Four firm. Definitely, great experience. Starting off with Big Four, environment, and a lot of long hours and hard work and all that kind of stuff. But still,
Right.
definitely probably the place where I learned that all the core base knowledge that later helped me through my career. Actually worked at PwC2, was my second Big Four experience after Ernst and Young. So I was kind of like in about 9 years, and your uh, account CPA kind of route that's pretty popular, where you start off in a public accounting firm, and then you find yourself in industry. Obviously, usually a lighter kind of sketch. You're not just asking questions or auditing something or just giving advice. You are the business. You are the client. You actually, if something's wrong with taxes or with something like that, like and you're like a consultant. You always have all these displays. You can go like, oh well, we told you,
Right.
right. But when it's you and you're like the tax director at the company, which is where I've been like for a while now, that's not an option. You're responsible for all things tax in most cases. So yeah, that's maybe like a little bit about my background for your viewers.
Okay. And real quick, when you were at the Big Four, right, you said you spent a total of 9 years there, and then you went into industry. And like you said, like that is a very, very common path, right? And many people in my audience will know that one, right? But what I always think is interesting is the why behind leaving the Big Four in like a ninth year, right? So what made you finally say, all right, I'm leaving and going into industry?
Yeah, I guess, at that time, and this, we're talking about like 2012 was when I did the switch to industry. The way the market was looking, the way like the client base was looking, and the team that I was, part of, and the way just that the the structure of the teams in terms of like where people were, uh, there was no clear path to like kind of like executive or partner kind of level
I see.
in sight. Like I wasn't feeling it, and nobody was
Right.
really, because the market wasn't in that great of
Right.
shape. Sort of getting out of the recession. And a lot of clients were like cutting their budgets, and I guess it was getting harder for leadership, for the partners to keep a solid book of business, and it's not exactly like we were getting like a lot of partner promotion. So I think now actually
Right. Right.
it might be a better time. Now I look at some news from the big four firms, and they're like promoting hundreds of partners. In those years when I was sort of making up my mind about my career, it wasn't looking that great. Like we only
Right.
saw like, I don't know, like a few, like handful of partner promotions in every team geography. So I was thinking, what, if I'm not going to see career growth, meaningful sort of career growth, and progress here, let's see if I can get a sense for how it is on the other side. And I was always I don't believe in that comment that like once you kind of like leave public, you can't go back. In fact,
Yeah. Yeah.
after I left, I had a lot of recruiters reach out to me from big four firms and sort of telling me to
Yeah.
consider coming back. So it's not
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
but as of right now, I'm really more of a fan of the industry side.
Awesome. Awesome. No, love it. And by the way, for the audience, just update them on what you do now. What are your roles, responsibilities? Where are you at? Right.
Sure, sure. So I'm part of this amazing company, Media Math. We're in the online advertising space. I am the tax director here, so I'm responsible for I'm the number one tax role basically here, and responsible for all things tax. Globally, we have a footprint of maybe around 10 offices around the world, including some in the US. I should say it's probably about 15, or more like, 5 in the US and then 10 around the world. We're in places like Spain, France, Germany, UK, Brazil, and we're a global advertising company focused on online advertising. We have an engine called that we call Terminal One. It's like we nickname it the brain, and it's regarded as one of the best optimization kind of platforms or systems that helps big companies. We serve mostly big companies.
Right. Right.
Your kind of Fortune 500 advertisers and like big agencies, and basically we help them optimize their spend online. So they'll get in, and it's basically an advertising agency but in the digital age. Like
Right. Right.
just how you would go to, like in the old times, you would go to an advertising agency, you would sit down with them, you would say, hey, I want to advertise my beer to I don't know, like males from 25 to 35 years old in this geography, because that's where
Right.
I'm
Right.
sell it, right?
Yeah.
And they would tell you, like, again, like 10 years ago, they would tell you, like, go to this radio station, go to this magazine, and put on this billboard. Right now, obviously,
Yeah.
everything's online. So the same kind of logic, like the client would give us the some of their metrics, or we could like do it together with them, suggest some direction, and then we would run the campaign for them using our data and other other like partners, like data and media like space and stuff like that. It's pretty interesting.
Right.
Our
Right.
big competitors are Google and Facebook, obviously, and these are hard to compete with because they have what you may have heard of as walled gardens. So their systems, like
Right.
the
Right.
Facebook environment and the Google environment is hard to penetrate because Google owns the search business effectively.
Mhm.
Is you could say it's a monopoly. Something similar with Facebook in the social media space. So,
Mhm.
but everything else, like we have access to, and even those like Google and Facebook inventories, we also have some access to. So
Mhm.
pretty good business. I've been here for 3.5 years. Really
Mhm.
like the company. Has a good like startup kind of feel to it, even though it's a 10 years old company. And I am obviously not the advertising kind of guy, but I'm the
Right, right.
tax guy. So everything that touches tax usually ends up on my desk. Yeah, so that's a little bit about my current job.
Awesome. No, I mean, I love it. I love the marketing advertising space and could talk all day about it, but we'll keep this to accounting, marketing, right? So that's a good segue into my next question, which is so while you were, tax director there, while you were, sitting tax director, you also wrote a book on US tax reform called U.S. Tax Reform for Hipsters, right? Is that right? There you go. That's
That's
the
what I
book.
called it.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
That's a
So
cool. It looks like that looks. I don't usually judge a book by its cover, but that looks about the coolest tax book I've seen so far.
oh yes, thanks. I think it is. So yeah, Juan. The idea was that I don't know if you want to hear a little bit of the history behind the book, but as I was doing my job and basically evaluating all the tax provisions that were enacted as part of the tax reform legislation already over a year ago, right? It was a December 17 event when they had this whole you know um big debate going on. This was like the hottest topic, and the
Mhm.
Senate, the Congress had different plans, and everything aligned, and the president signed it just before Christmas. So basically, this is the plan that the book is about. This plan, effectively, this legislation changed the rules, as you're well aware, in the personal
Mhm.
space, the international space, the business space, and that's our new tax law. And some of the things are in there are temporary, like the personal cuts. If you want to call them cuts, because people could debate about some of it. For some people, it might actually produce a higher tax burden. It is true.
Interesting.
Yeah. So effectively, I was studying all this because I gotta know it, and I gotta factor it into my tax projections, my tax provision calculation, my estimates and all that kind of stuff. So
Mhm.
I had to do it anyway. It's not like hey, let me write a book about like making smoothies or something unrelated to my job.
Right, right.
So I was actually doing this as part of my job, and I found myself, I'm pretty thorough kind of guy. Like I try to get to the point. Like I try to, gather the different like pieces of information. Like it could
Mhm.
be the actual law, it could be some commentary on the law, and kind of like make sense of it, make sure I understand it, and make notes of it, so I'm able to present to the leadership and such. And I actually was preparing like an internal communication, just more like an email to people in the company. Hey, this, obviously I'm the tax guy, so I'm supposed to like let them know what it means. Let
Mhm.
individuals know, hey, this went into effect. You might see like your tax rate drop on your like paycheck and something like that. And then from a corporate standpoint, all the provisions that have to do, international rules, the different deduction limitations, such as entertainment now being disallowed, meals
Right.
getting more limited, as and interest getting potentially limited, stuff like that. So as I was doing all this, I was like,
Mhm.
and explaining it to oftentimes to like non-tax professionals. This was all happening a year ago, basically,
Right,
January,
right.
when it was just enacted. I thought, what, like, this is like the biggest topic now. So I kind of wanted to write a book all along. I was had this in the back of my head. So I'm like,
Uh-huh.
this is a good like, I wanted to write a book like in general, like a simple, easy to read book about taxes, because I got feedback from, my friends and family that I'm kind of good at explaining like tax concepts in a
Right.
relatively easy to grasp like way. And some
Awesome.
people would tell me, oh, thanks. I mean, you like the way you explained it. I actually finally understood like what
Yeah.
it's all about. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and
Yes.
and so I got a lot of support from friends and family with this, initiative, and kind of started writing it. And then as it started taking shape, it kind of like was, I had my own little strategies about how to keep it moving and things like that. But I can share more. I mean, I don't want to like take forever. Maybe you can, ask
No.
me a few questions, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no. Thank you for explaining all of that. I guess what I'm interested in next too, and some of the viewers, I'm sure they're interested, is when you kind of had that thought, okay, hey, I'm writing a book, right? And it's going to be about taxes. What was the process for gathering a lot of that information? And how did you feel while you were writing it? I guess because or you knew when you were writing the book, like at some point the facts in this book, they're going to change, right? It's just going to change. But it's a great book to write right now. But I'm just asking, during that collection process of everything you were saying, this should be in the book and this shouldn't. How did that sort of go for you? Because that's very interesting.
Yeah, I can share that. That's kind of what I was talking about the strategy to kind of like move the thing forward. I mean, there's books about like taxes for a single year, so it's fine, that I guess it is focused on the new rules, but at the
Yeah.
same time, these rules are going to stick around. So the main, concepts in there, are going to be sort of like the shelf life of this book is the next, 7 years. And but
Yeah.
here's the deal. When I was kind of gathering the information, I was evaluating it from a sort of a practical standpoint. Like, is this good practical information? Is this, how would I phrase this if I was explaining this to a client, or,
Mhm.
a non tax individual that kind of like is, new to the whole idea of like, taxes, and like, that maybe doesn't know like the difference between
Mhm.
like credits and deductions and what phase out is all about. So you will notice, and I know you're gonna read my book too, right? You'll
Right, right.
notice that
Thank-
I put a lot of like little pieces of information that are helpful,
Yeah.
that I got feedback on, like explaining, along the way, general tax terminology, what, how what AGI is made up of, and, adjusted gross income, or how a credit works versus a deduction, or how phase out
Right, right.
elimination work. So all this is pretty much like timeless stuff. But then when it comes to, to the changes, I actually started with two. It's interesting. I started with two aspects that are key that are key components of any book, that
Mhm.
actually got me moving in a very swift kind of way. And I don't know if that advice might be helpful to other, new authors. So I actually started by coming up with a structure. So the
Mhm.
structure is like right here, that's basically my contents of the book.
Awesome.
And it's like, hey, it's the introduction. And then I thought, okay, let me structure, it needs to have some structure. So it was
Yeah.
like, the next thing was personal tax, obviously covering all the personal provisions and changes.
Mhm.
Then it was, I have a section on wealth transfers that has to do with estates and gifts and planning around those, because there were some changes in that space too. Then it's business
Mhm.
taxes, which I actually kind of split in an interesting way. Hopefully, people will grasp the logic here. There's businesses in
Mhm.
general, and a lot of things affect businesses in general. But then there's special treatment around corporations and pass-through entities. So I have then business tax followed by C corps and pass-throughs as separate chapters on those. Followed by international, followed by compensation benefits, and then I have a section on tax exempt
Right, right.
organizations, and then even just some random like industry impact notes, because things like
Ah, interesting.
I know there's like a section on alcohol, not that I'm like
Mhm.
promoting this alcohol kind of like thing, but there is a big changes that were actually were good news for like craft beer and wine producers. There were like some reductions in excise taxes, so stuff like that. Anyway, so like I think it was a lot of work went into it, but it's not a long book. So I'm going to be lying if I will say like, oh, I went through like, thousands of pages of like drafts. I actually tried to make it nice, short and sweet. I think people don't read that much anymore. People are like bored after like a 5-minute video. That's why we have to keep that short too. So I actually also limited my pages right away. Like I told myself, it's funny, I actually went to a Barnes and Noble store and I picked out like books from the shelf and I just looked at them and I thought like, that's too big. And then I found that nice little, cute little book. And I said like, that's a perfect size. And actually, I don't know what the book was about. It was simply like a trip to kind of decide on the size. So I decided, okay, it's going to be like, that big and like, and I'll put around 125 pages, which I end up doing
that's
like 127 pages. And then I did the cover.
That's very cool, yeah.
And then I did the cover and the title, and the cover and the title, as you can see, there's like I actually came up with the title first. I thought I need a catchy name, but then at the same time, I need a name that will, speak to about, like, will actually say what the book is about. So, the book is about tax reform rules. So, I have to put it in the title. So then I thought, okay, U.S. tax reform, maybe like for, but I can't do for dummies. That's probably already like, trademarked or something. So I thought, hey, why don't I do U.S. tax reform for hipsters? And then I put like a hipster on the cover. So, so that's how I came up with that. And then I found an artist online that actually drew that hipster for me at my request. I actually asked him to draw like a confused kind of hipster, with like that's like puzzled by all these tax rules. So that's the story behind the book. As I kind of, so in other words, once I had the title, the number of pages, and the sections, it kind of all started falling into place. Like it started like my notes from my different like researches started kind of like I started sort of filling in the gaps, and then I think it was a really nice experience, and I enjoyed it, and hopefully I get to take that message to the masses, and people will enjoy it.
Yeah, so that's awesome. Just one more question here before we go. One more question before the last question. But I also noticed that you had a audio version of the book, right? So if I were to read the book, that's the version I would be going with. But recording, did you like read? Is it you reading on the audiobook, or is it like someone else reading?
No, it's actually an actor from Washington, D.C. with an amazing voice.
Awesome.
I really recommend the audio version of the book. I actually that was one of the parts of the book that I invested quite a bit in, because this guy was a little expensive, but he had that wonderful voice. There's actually a good part of this experience with the book was just the whole publishing process. Like I self-published the book. Like I didn't pay a publisher. I actually did the cover myself, and I did like the different like type settings in there myself and all that kind of stuff.
I love it.
You'll see there's even like funny little picture. I mean, they're kind of more like icons, like pictures in the book. So to keep it a little. So thanks for all this. And basically, what was I gonna say? So when I was, when I did the book, I thought I gotta have it in all formats and all places possible. So then I did the Kindle version. Actually, reformatted the Kindle myself too, which was good experience. Then I uploaded to Amazon through a service called KDP, Kindle Direct Publishing, which actually produces the paperbacks too. So there's no paperbacks like in my garage or anything like that. Like when people order the book on a paperback, in the paperback version, it actually gets printed and shipped to them. So this book,
that's solid.
Yeah, that's very cool. So this book, for instance, it has it has somewhere here, it actually says made in USA, and it has a date like of January 12th. So can you believe this book is just a few days old? Because I actually
Love
ordered
it.
fresh author copies, for my friends so
Yeah,
anyway,
that's very
so
cool.
that was a big eye opener, how everything is like, you know, kind of how you can become a celebrity with just YouTube and the camera.
Right.
Same, you don't need like a publisher, you don't need like
There's no one
you can check
stopping
your
you.
right. So I didn't really hire like a somebody to review or rewrite things. I relied on some technology, that might be helpful to authors. There's a lot of it out there. Like, there's the Grammarly tool that actually I
Mhm.
ran this through just to kind of like make sure that my grammar is fine and all the funky like spelling is correct. And of
Right.
course I self-reviewed this many times. So I'm really comfortable with this as my sort of work product. And
Right.
then once
Right.
it was like locked in, I actually went and to this website called ACX. ACX.com is a service that produces and does your audiobooks. And over
Okay.
there, it's an amazing experience. I actually put a sample of your book, like you put a piece of your book,
Hmm.
and then you have like an offer. You say, hey, I'm gonna pay like that a percent. You could do it for choice, a percentage of a royalty from the book, or like a flat fee or an hourly fee for reading the book. I noticed that the hourly fee was more popular, so I actually went in that direction. And when I posted it and included how much I was offering, a lot of it was like a casting kind of like experience
Yeah.
where like, a lot of these audiobook readers send me their pieces, and then I was like listening to them,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
it was like it was so cool because
That's really cool.
there was this one guy that had the most amazing voice. I really
Mhm.
love it. It's like very soothing. It has this amazing voice. He's an actor from DC, like I said, and it was the most expensive voice, but it was worth it. Right now,
Awesome.
you'll be surprised, but
Love
audiobooks
it.
are actually just as popular as the paper books and the Kindle books. I would say that
Mhm.
that I wasn't expecting this, but right now they're kind of evenly split, like more or less, like
Interesting.
yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. No, I think it's a great thing to have for a book. So no, I was loving to hear about that process. So hopefully the audience enjoyed that as much as I did, because that was educational to me too. So thank you very much. Thank you for sharing that. And
Absolutely. And as we wrap up, you may want to mention, when I did the book, I was so excited. Obviously, I had to do something else, but I can't just write another book,
go for it. Yeah.
right away. So I did the app,
Right. Right.
and the app is absolutely free. And actually, you can find it on the website that I have for the app. It's called Global Tax Guide. Very, very easy to remember.
I
Global Tax
will.
Guide.
I'll link it. I'll link it
Yeah.
below. I'll link
And
that link. And
here it is. It's actually I ended up calling it like Global Tax Guide for Hipsters, just for fun. And I actually had
yeah, that's cool.
the same artist actually came up with the flash screen. And the cool thing is that
Right.
basically you have like these little flags for each country. I tried to gather in
Awesome.
one place like basic tax information for every country around the world. I actually
Mm.
have all
Mm.
the countries, even like your little islands are there. And
Yeah.
even if they have no tax, you just tap on the country and it says we have no tax here. and
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
so
That's very
unlike
cool.
other guys, we're like, hey, we cover all the big jurisdictions. I actually tried to cover all. It's not a lot of, it's not a ton of information. If you're doing
Mhm.
like deeper, research, you're actually trying to like have some kind of international opinion or something like that. It might be a
Right.
light kind of tool for that. But if you're a professional that deals with international operations and you just want to quickly look up, hey, how much is the corporate rate in Estonia or something, or you just go there and it has it. At least as of like December they were up to date. Now my goal is to keep it keep it up to date. Obviously,
Right.
tax.
Right. Awesome. No, thank you for coming on the show. And by the way, I think that book for you like going for me as a marketer, just looking at you, the fact that you already have a book, the fact it is about something that people struggle with in your actual field that you're in, and you cover it. Oh my God, like from a marketing perspective, that gives you so much authority, right? And forget, like, because I know that certain people watching this right now, just like the way accountants think, they'll be like, oh, like, come on, like everyone knows this stuff, right? But we can say the rule a million times, right? It's just like what he said earlier, what he noticed about his family and friends. They're telling him he has a special knack for breaking it down to people and communicating that to people. And I think that's one of the strongest things you can have in accounting, because it is something that people do not understand. Like I think accounting, I'm a nerd. I'm a big nerd because I like accounting communications. Like that's so nerdy. Like how people understand accounting or don't understand accounting. Why did the whole class not get it, but I got it, right? What's going on there? So very interesting episode. I think that book is gonna do awesome for you and your brand. And before you go, do you have any last words for the accountants out there, the tax professionals, and just the professionals that are also hoping to write a book one day? Any
Yeah,
last
I
words
mean,
of wisdom?
I actually, I think, since we were so sort of zoomed into the book and focused on that, that book, which is a very relevant and timely book, because obviously we're now in tax season, and it is a tax reform and, government shutdown kind of tax season, and obviously, we're here, and I just want to tell you guys, even if you feel like, hey, this is like written for like noobs or something, I don't think so. I think there's a lot of like things I learned myself as I was writing the book, and I think you'll appreciate it, even if you're like a seasoned tax professional. That that's, I guess, the audience of this webcast potentially.
Mm-hmm.
I think that you definitely need a copy, and I would really like to connect with you. So again, easy to find. I have it in all different places. Like you can find it on your iPad through iTunes. A U.S. Tax Reform for Hipsters, by me, Timur Knyazev, and actually I created like a short link, a short domain name that you can use to quickly. It will actually, kind of forward you to the Amazon page, actually, but because that's where most of my sales are happening. So I thought, why not create like a short link? It's very easy. Hipstertax.com. Hipstertax.com, one word. I'm trying to promote the book now because this is the time when tax is a hot topic. So definitely, would appreciate you putting that link under the
Linked
video.
below. Yep.
Yep. And then, once you guys get the book, if you have questions or want to connect, I'm very, open to new networking opportunities and such. And, if you're in New York City, I'm based here in
Yeah.
the downtown area. So, definitely, glad to be on this show, kind of a new experience for me. And,
Awesome.
hope I did pretty well. Give me your feedback.
Perfect. Love it. Love it, Timur. Thanks for coming on the show.
Great. Take care, everybody.